In this lesson, I'm going to give you 3 of the most basic and the most important tips, in my opinion. If you're a beginner, you're just learning how to play guitar, or maybe you've been playing for a little while, you're an intermediate guitar player, and you're struggling. Yep, this little scrub right up here, that's me 10 or 11, 12 years ago when I was just learning how to play guitar. I had no idea what I was doing. I was learning all kind of chords. I had no direction, no purpose. So if I could tell him 3 things, if I could tell you, if that's you, you're a beginner, or you've just kind of been putzing along and not making a whole lot of progress, this is what I would tell you. I would tell you 3 tips, and they both revolve around chords and strumming. So the first tip, chords. You've probably seen or been taught these chords before. This G chord, this D chord, this C chord, and then this E minor chord. Now you can unlock and you can play thousands and thousands of songs with these chords. Songs from pop to Christian to country, all different genres. You can play thousands of songs with these chords. But the challenge is, the problem is, when you play chords with this formation, so we have the G chord there, we're moving down to that D chord, and then up to the C chord. You see how much movement that is? I have to take my fingers and really my hand off the entire guitar, off all the strings, when I move and transition to each different chord. So that's just, it's a lot of work, and it's challenging because you're looking down, you have those awkward transitions where you're looking down to make sure you have your fingers on the right strings, on the right fret. And it just makes strumming and it makes rhythm guitar just challenging, because you, as an acoustic guitar player, you want to have rhythm, you want to have some flow, and when you're transitioning from chord to chord like this, where you're taking all of your fingers off the strings and off the guitar, it just makes it super, super challenging and super frustrating. So I don't know when I learned this in my journey. It was 2 or 3 or 4 years into playing. But I learned that you can just keep, so we still want to play those same 4 chords, but we want to use a much more simple chord formation. So we're going to keep this ring finger on the 3rd fret here, on that B string, the 2nd string from the bottom. We're going to lock that in there, and then we're going to put the pinky finger right underneath it. So those are both going to be on the 3rd fret, and you should hear this. If you pick back and forth between them, that's what you should hear. So now for the G chord, and I'll have the chord formations up on the screen here. For this G chord, there we go. For the C chord, all you have to do, we're going to keep these 2 fingers locked in, just move this structure, these 2 fingers, just move them down 1 string. And that's your C chord. If you want to get to the D chord, take the middle finger off and then move your pointer finger down 1 string. That's your D chord. So that in and of itself, going from the G to the C to the D, that's way easier than doing this. So then to get to the E minor chord, we're going to keep these 2 fingers locked in there. We're just going to go these 2 fingers on the 2nd fret. So we're keeping these 2 fingers locked in the entire time. So it makes changing chords so much easier, as opposed to... I think it sounds great just with the consistency of having those two strings held down the entire time. So I'm going to give you just two quick drills to practice and use as exercises with these 4 chords. So the first drill is this. I want you to get into your G chord here, and I want you to just take your pick and pick each string. Go right down the pike here, as I always say. You don't have to go that fast. Go slow. So if you hear that, then you know you have all the strings properly held down. If you hear something like this, that little rattling sound, or just that muffled sound, you know that whatever string you're picking, you've got to go find that finger and push that finger down more to hear the string clearly. So this is a really good drill because you can isolate each string. That's not, I need to push that pinky finger in more. So you can isolate each string and do this with each chord, the G chord, the C chord, the D chord, and the E minor chord. And it's also going to be doing this. You're getting used to picking each string, so it's going to be working on your hand-eye coordination. That way when you do start doing some songs that involve some more like intricate picking patterns, you've been working on this since day one with this drill. So that's the first drill. The second drill, I used to do this second drill all the time, and you don't even need to really strum. For this drill, I would just, transitioning chords was just so challenging for me when I was my first few years into playing guitar. So what I just started doing was not even strumming, but I would just go from chord to chord. And you'll hear a little sound there, depending on how hard you're pressing in. But I would just be building muscle memory and just going through repetitions, getting these fingers moving in different chord progressions. So you build in that muscle memory, so you should get to the point where you don't even need to look where your fingers are going. Now you can also do that with a pick. You can also strum. But if you want, you don't even need to strum. Just you're building muscle memory with these fingers here on the left-hand side. So the second tip, the second thing I would tell myself 10 or 12 years ago involves strumming. And strumming is probably the most challenging thing for probably every guitar player. I know I struggled mightily for probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I would always be losing my pick in this sound hole. The pick would always be slipping out of my hands. I wasn't smooth until eventually I realized that if you use a thin pick, and this has helped so many people, so don't sleep on this tip. Using a thin pick, one with a lot of bend and a lot of give, it helps so much because it gives you more room for error and more margin for error when you're strumming. So this is what I mean. When you strum, the pick glides down the strings. So when you're a beginner, a lot of times you're not really that good at strumming, right? Like you're just not that good. So you're gonna be a little bit clunky, and if you have a really thick pick, that pick might kind of get caught up on your up strum on one of those, I don't know, just the third string from the bottom or the second string from the bottom. And then you might lose it in this sound hole, or it might fall off and fall on the ground. When you have that really thick pick, it's stiff. There's no room, there's no margin for error. So you have to be perfect in your strumming, which you're just not gonna be. So at some point, I found that I use this 0.46 millimeter Jim Dunlop nylon pick, and it allows the strumming and the pick to glide down each chord and through each strings much more easy and much more fluidly. You'll be able to strum like this much easier. And I've been using this pick for probably the last 10 years, and playing guitar on one of the largest worship bands and largest worship teams in my area, in all of Pittsburgh. If you see all of my lessons, however many guitar lessons I have over the last 2, 3, 4 years, odds are I'm probably using this white pick. And guess what? I can't tell you how many times people will message me saying, "Hey, what kind of guitar are you playing? It sounds so good." And just, I'm using this pick with my guitar. So picks really, really matter, especially when you're just beginning. I've helped so many students and so many people just by using a thin pick. So I've got a strumming playlist on my channel. Definitely go check that out. I'll include the link for this type of pick. 0.46, go get a 0.50, a 0.50, whatever. Anything kind of light and bendable is really going to help you out. So I want to give you just a strum pattern drill and an exercise just like I did in the previous tip. So I want you to just go to your G chord. And we'll just start with one chord for now. I want you to do this strum pattern. Down, down, up, up, down, down. Down, down, up, down, down. So just practice on that G chord. If you're just a beginner, practice down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, down. And then add in some of the other chords we've learned. Down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, down. And start slow. You can even start slower than that. And then once you get comfortable, start playing that a little bit faster and use different chord progressions. Instead of going from the G to the C to the D to the E minor, maybe you start off with the G, and then you go to the D, and then you go to the E minor, and then you go to the C. So just, that's a really good common strum pattern that a lot of songs and a lot of different genres use. All right, so the last tip, the third tip I would tell myself, or tell you if you're just beginning or if you've been playing for a little while, is we're going to combine tip 1 with tip 2. So we're going to combine the strumming with the chords. So what I mean is, just because it's a really common error that a lot of people, beginners and intermediate players, make. Just because we have 6 strings on the guitar doesn't mean that you should be strumming all 6 strings for every chord. For the G chord, you can strum all 6 strings. For the E minor chord, you can strum all 6 strings. But for the C chord, you should not be strumming this top string. You should only be strumming the bottom 5 strings. Because this here, that middle finger on the 3rd fret, that's our bass note. So we don't want to strum this top string, otherwise it'll sound like this. Which just sounds off, it sounds bad. So you might, what's frustrating about this, you might have each finger perfectly on each string, you're perfectly holding down each string, you're getting that good, clear, crispy sound, but you're hearing this. And it's just really, really frustrating. So you need to either mute this low E string, this top string, with your thumb. Rest your thumb up there on it. That way you can really just kind of play without thinking too much. You're just strumming all 6 strings. Or you can bring this middle finger and kind of bump it into that low E string. But when you do that, you also have to make sure you keep pressure on that 2nd string from the top that your middle finger's on. So that's a little bit more challenging in my opinion. The last thing you could do, if you wanted, is just intentionally strum the bottom 5 strings. So you're not worried about pushing this finger up, you're not worried about wrapping the thumb on that low E string. You're just intentionally only strumming the bottom 5 strings, which when you start playing with a lot of rhythm, it is that makes it challenging, because you want to, you know, you don't want to be thinking, okay, I can only hit the bottom 5 strings. So I would play around with a couple of those options, see which one works the best for you, but we don't want to be strumming that low E string. Same thing with the D chord. So if we're playing this D chord, again, you could have each string held down perfectly, everything could sound good, but once you start strumming, that just doesn't sound good. That's just not how it's supposed to sound. And it's gonna really get you frustrated, because you're like, man, I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing, and it sounds terrible. So for this D chord, you should be strumming the bottom 4 strings. This D string here, 4th one from the bottom, that D string, that's the bass note. So we really wanna be strumming those bottom 4 strings. If you catch this A string, the 5th string from the bottom, that's fine. If you catch it while you're strumming, that's fine. But we definitely don't want to be hearing that low E string. So again, similar to the C chord, if you want to wrap your thumb around that low E to mute it, we don't want to hear this, but we just want to mute it. If you do this, and if you clip that A string a little bit while you're strumming, it's definitely not a big deal. I do it a lot. It's totally fine, but we definitely don't want to hear. So those are the top 3 tips, the top 3 most practical tips that I would give my younger self 10, 12 years ago, or I would give any beginner or someone really trying to learn how to play guitar the right way. So I hope that helps you out. I think it will. I love y'all, and I'll see you soon.